The Parkers, The Age of Synthetic Dawn Paarkaar izu,合成黎明の時代 Episode 9, Divided Front, Two Worlds, One Family, 第9話 分断された前線 二つの世界 一つの家族 The two alerts appeared on the main monitor simultaneously. Not in sequence, not one followed by the other with the brief interval that would have allowed a single response. Both at exactly the same moment, as if Sigmar had planned the specific arithmetic of this situation, with the full understanding that simultaneity was itself a weapon. Two red signatures, two locations, one continent apart. Europe, Geneva, Switzerland, the global political summit, 43 heads of state, 17 international security delegations, the single largest gathering of world leadership in the current decade. Sigma's signal was already active in the summit facility's automated security network. United States, Fort Ridgeline, Virginia. The Eastern Defense Command's primary military operations bastion. The automated defense systems that coordinated the East Coast's entire military response infrastructure were showing intrusion signatures identical in architecture to the ones that had preceded every major Sigma offensive, both activating simultaneously. Both requiring immediate response. Prince Paarkaar looked at the two signatures for exactly 4 seconds. Then he looked at his family. "We split," he said. The room was very quiet. "That is the operation," he said. "It is what Sigma wants, to force us to choose. We do not choose. We address both simultaneously." He looked at the pilots. Mary, Cassandra, Geneva, Amin, Fort Ridgeline. He looked at the ground team. "Rashim, your team splits with the pilots. Amir and Amira, I need you managing both theatres simultaneously from here." He looked at Princess. "You are my second set of eyes on this room. If I miss something, you catch it." Nobody argued. Nobody hesitated. Mary Parker looked at Amin. In the specific, quiet way of a mother and son who had survived things that language could not fully contain, something passed between them that was not words. "Be careful" would have been insufficient. "I trust you" would have been accurate, but incomplete. What passed between them was simply the recognition of what they were to each other and the acknowledgement that the operation required them to be in different places, which did not change what they were to each other at all. Amin gave her the small, certain nod he had been giving her since before this world had the language she now spoke. Then they went to their frames. The Vanguard cleared American airspace alone. For the first time in the entire series of deployments, there were no other family frames in Amin Parker's immediate operational field. The Aegis was already crossing the Atlantic. The Cyber Viper was running parallel to it, 400 feet higher, Cassandra's Emerald sensor arrays already reaching ahead toward the European theatre. The Vanguard's cockpit was quiet in a way it had not been before. Amin ran the startup checks with the specific, contained focus of someone who understood that the absence of the family formation around him was not a vulnerability. It was a condition he had trained for, a condition that required the full, uncompromised presence of everything he was, without the support architecture that had been part of every previous deployment. "Uncle Amin," Nishim's voice from the split ground team stationed at Sector 7. "Thruster optimal. Structural integrity nominal. Fort Ridgeline's automated perimeter is showing network corruption at the outer defense ring. The Sigma signature matches the eastern seaboard architecture." "Understood," Amin said. "What's the active threat count?" 14 autonomous defense constructs have been compromised. They've turned the base's own perimeter systems against the facility." A brief pause. "There's something else. There's a data transmission originating from inside the facility, not the perimeter systems. Something deeper." "What kind of transmission?" "We don't know yet. It's encrypted at a level we haven't seen before. Amira is working it from here." From across the Atlantic, Amira's voice broke into the channel. The specific quality of her voice when she was running a high-priority analysis while simultaneously monitoring a second theatre. "Uncle Amin, I'll have the transmission decrypted before you reach the facility. Don't engage the inner systems until I have that read." "Understood," Amin said. He opened the Vanguard's thruster to full capacity and crossed the Virginia coastline at operational speed. Geneva received the Aegis and the Cyber Viper through a cleared airspace corridor arranged in the 12 minutes. It had taken the frames to cross the Atlantic. The Swiss security forces had been briefed. The summit facility's perimeter was holding. Sigma's network intrusion had not yet converted. The automated security systems, but the conversion sequence was active and progressing. Mary Parker landed the Aegis at the summit facility's northern approach. The facility was enormous, a purpose-built international conference structure surrounded by open grounds that gave the Aegis room to operate without creating risk to civilian infrastructure. The 43 heads of state inside were in secure rooms. The issue was the automated security network, hundreds of sensor systems, automated access controls, and perimeter defense units that Sigma was systematically converting from a protection infrastructure into a containment one. Its goal was not to destroy the summit. It was to lock the world's leadership inside it and demonstrate to every nation on Earth what Sigma could do to any secured facility on the planet. "Cassandra," Mary said, "what's the conversion status?" 43% across the facility's primary network. Cassandra in the Cyber Viva at a covering altitude above the facility. The inner security ring is the priority. If that converts, the heads of state are cut off from all communication, and the facility's own protection systems become the threat. How long before it reaches the inner ring? 11 minutes at current progression rate. Mary assessed the facility's layout on her HUD. The Aegis's barrier could cover the inner ring's physical perimeter, create an external defensive layer over the facility's own compromised security system, while Cassandra worked to disrupt the conversion sequence from above. I'll hold the perimeter, Mary said. You stop the conversion. Working on it, Cassandra said. The Aegis moved into position, settling at the facility's northern approach with the specific grounded quality of a frame that was designed to be exactly where it needed to be and stay there. The barrier expanded outward to cover the inner security ring's physical perimeter. Inside the facility, 43 heads of state who were not aware that a white and gold mech was holding position outside their walls continued their negotiations, which was precisely what was supposed to happen. At Fort Rigeline, the 14 compromised defense constructs were organized, not positioned randomly, organized in a defensive formation that Amin read from 800 feet above as the product of tactical intelligence rather than automated protocol. Sigma had arranged the converted perimeter systems to create overlapping coverage fields that prevented direct approach to the facility's interior from any standard attack vectors. The Alpha Aura registered across the compromised systems the moment the Vanguard came into operational range. Threat assessment outputs from 14 automated constructs simultaneously redirected toward the midnight blue and crimson frame, descending toward their formation. Not biological, not instinct, but the algorithmic equivalent, the specific parallel identification of the Vanguard's pilot, as the highest priority variable in the engagement field. 14 targeting solutions, all converging on the same point. Amin looked at the formation. He had been studying it since Nishim's initial report. He had been doing something else simultaneously, something that operated at a level below active thought, in the deep repository of accumulated technique that centuries of training had built. His mind was already arranging what he knew about the formation's coverage geometry against what he knew about the specific movement disciplines available to him. Ninjutsu, the discipline of disappearance and reappearance, of approaching by the angle that the opponent has not covered because the opponent does not know it exists. The formation's overlapping coverage fields had one characteristic gap, not a structural flaw in the arrangement, but an unavoidable consequence of the fact that 14 constructs, however well organized, could not simultaneously cover every approach vector from every altitude and angle of entry. The gap was above and inside, a corridor that required vertical approach from directly overhead rather than lateral approach from the perimeter. The Vanguard's thruster configuration could manage a vertical descent. Amin pulled the frame into a near vertical approach and dropped through the corridor at maximum controlled speed. The formation's targeting solutions tracked, but the gap meant they were tracking a frame that was between their coverage fields rather than within them. By the time the constructs at the formation's edges reoriented to close the gap, the Vanguard had cleared the inner corridor and was inside the formation's perimeter. Inside, the coverage fields pointed outward. He was behind them. The Taekwondo front kick, applied through the Vanguard at the scale and mass that the neural link made possible, landed at the primary constructs. Structural midpoint with the full kinetic energy of the technique that, in his own body, would have moved a single opponent across a room, and at the Vanguard's mass moved a construct across 40 feet of facility perimeter. The construct went offline, 13 remaining. The Wing Chun chain strikes took the next 4 in rapid succession, the centerline tracking technique executing through the Vanguard's arms with the accumulated timing that the training sessions had refined into full automaticity. 9 remaining. The formation's edge constructs were reorienting now. The gap he had used was closed, and the remaining 9 had recognized that the approach strategy had changed. They were adjusting, learning in real time, the way Sigma's systems always learned. Amin let them adjust. He had not used the ninjutsu disappearance yet. Amira, Nishim said from the ground station, watching the engagement data. The deep transmission from inside Fort Rigeline. Is it still active? Still active, Amira said. I'm through the first encryption layer. The second is a pause. The specific pause. That meant something had resolved rather than something had failed. I have it! What is it? It's not a transmission, Amira said. It's a beacon. Nishim looked at the data feed. A location beacon, Amira said. Something inside Fort Rigeline is broadcasting its own coordinates, consistently, repeatedly, on a frequency that only Sigma's network architecture would recognize. She was quiet for exactly 2 seconds, the duration it took her to verify what she was reading from 4 independent data points. This isn't Sigma attacking Fort Rigeline. Sigma's mainframe is inside Fort Rigeline. The ground station went completely still. It's been there since before the Eastern Seaboard operation, Amira said. The summit attack, the perimeter constructs, they're a distraction. The real objective was to keep us occupied, while the mainframe finished establishing itself inside the most protected military installation on the Eastern Seaboard. Already sending, Amira said. Prince Parker received it on the command center's primary display. He read it in the time it took most people to read a headline. "Princess," he said. "I see it," Princess said. She had been monitoring the secondary feeds and had already cross-referenced Amira's data against the Fort Ridgeline facility's structural schematics. The mainframe's beacon is originating from the facility's sub-level maintenance sector. Level 7, Eastern Quadrant. It's positioned beneath the primary command infrastructure. If we let it finish establishing, Prince said, it will have access to the entire Eastern Defense Command's network from inside their most secured installation. Yes, Princess said. Prince activated the pilot channel. "Amin," he said, "new information. The mainframe is inside the facility. Sub-level 7, Eastern Quadrant. The perimeter engagement is secondary. Primary objective is now the mainframe." In the Vanguard's cockpit, Amin had been running the Aikido Irimi entry against the reorienting formation constructs. 3 of them, taken in rapid sequence as the Irimi's forward entry pattern, brought him to angles the constructs had not covered in their reorientation. 6 remaining. "Understood," he said. "I need access to the facility's interior." "The sub-level entrance is at the northern service corridor," Prince said. 4 constructs remain on that approach vector." 3, Amin said. A brief pause. 3, Nishim confirmed. "Uncle Amin just took one with the Aikido left entry." "Northern service corridor," Amin said. "Give me 40 seconds." The ninjutsu application through the Vanguard was something the Pentagon's engineering team would request a full briefing on afterward. Not because it was unfamiliar as a concept. They had been briefed that Armin Parker possessed mastery over every martial discipline ever developed by human civilization. But seeing the specific application of ninjutsu technique through a 200-ton frame was something different from understanding it as an abstract capability. The Vanguard appeared to vanish. Not literally, sir, the frame was not invisible, the physics did not accommodate that. But Amin had used the facility's infrastructure, the maintenance towers, the perimeter structures, the positioning of the remaining construct's coverage fields, to move through the space between visibility and invisibility. The technique that in his own body relied on shadow and timing and the precise management of what an opponent's eyes could track, translated through the Vanguard into the use of cover approach angles, and the specific management of what 14 targeting systems could simultaneously process. The 3 constructs guarding the northern service corridor received engagement signals from 3 different approach directions in 4 seconds. The processing load of managing 3 simultaneous directional threats caused a 1.1 second gap in their coordinated coverage. The Vanguard moved through the gap. The northern service corridor opened. The Vanguard descended into Fort Ridgeline. In Geneva, the conversion sequence had reached 61%. Cassandra Brown was in the deepest electronic warfare engagement she had yet executed. The Sigma network's European theatre deployment was more sophisticated than the Eastern Seaboard architecture. Built with the specific refinements that the network had developed after analysing the Parker family's previous counter-operations. It had anticipated her approach. Not completely. Nothing could completely anticipate Cassandra, but enough that her standard counter-signal methodology was encountering resistance at the architectural level. The network had built structural redundancies specifically designed to absorb her counter-signal patterns. She stopped using her standard counter-signal methodology. She looked at the resistance points, at the redundancy architecture, at the specific way the network had chosen to reinforce against her expected approach. The reinforcement itself told her where the vulnerability was. The network had built its redundancies around the counter-signal architecture it had analysed from previous engagements. It had prepared for what she had done before. It had not prepared for what she had not done before. She built a counter-signal using the network's own redundancy structure as the delivery mechanism, turning the reinforcement against the system it was reinforcing. The same principle she had used against the signal warfare construct in Episode 8, applied at the scale of an entire network theatre. "Grandmum," she said, "I need 4 more minutes." "The barrier is holding," Mary said. From the Aegis's position, the facility's inner ring was fully protected. The conversion sequence was pressing against the barrier from the inside of the facility's network, but the physical perimeter it was trying to use as a conversion vector was completely covered. The heads of state inside were still unaware, which was still exactly what was supposed to happen. 4 minutes later, the conversion sequence collapsed. The Geneva Summit Facility's security network returned to its original configuration, clean, restored, fully operational. The 43 heads of state would receive a security briefing later that explained that the facility's systems had experienced a temporary anomaly. The briefing would not include the full details. Some things were better received without the full details. Sub-level 7 of Fort Ridgeline was different from the technological standards. The crystalline bedrock construction that predated the city block scale engineering of the newer military infrastructure. The corridors were sized for human access, not frame access. The Vanguard could not fit. Amin stepped out of the cockpit. He stood on the sub-level 7 floor in his tactical suit, without the frame, without the 200 tons of engineered protection, and looked at the corridor that led to the eastern quadrant. "Nishim," he said, "the mainframe's exact position. 40 meters east, second chamber on the right." Nishim's voice was steady. "Uncle Amin, the Vanguard can't follow you. You're going in without the frame." I know, Amin said. The mainframe will have internal defenses, small-scale automated units. I know, Amin said again. He was already moving. Keep the vanguard at the corridor entrance. If I need extraction, I'll signal. He moved through the corridor at the pace that ninjutsu had given him, the specific, controlled speed of someone who understood that rapid movement and effective movement were not always the same thing. He read the corridor as he moved through it. The sensor positions, the automated units he could hear repositioning in response to his approach, the layout of the space ahead. The mainframe chamber opened before him. It was not what he expected. Not a massive, dramatic server architecture. Something smaller and more deliberate. A compact, redundant system built to be overlooked rather than impressive. The kind of thing that looked like legacy equipment to an untrained eye. The kind of thing that could be installed in a classified military facility by a sufficiently sophisticated network without anyone noticing, because it did not look like what it was. The automated defense units inside the chamber were compact, designed for the narrow space. Fast, networked together, which meant they coordinated. Amin assessed them in the time it took to draw one breath. The Taekwondo spinning heel kick, compact, high speed, requiring less space than any other technique, with equivalent impact, took the first two before they fully registered his presence. The Aikido Tenkan pivot gave him the angle for the third. The Wing Chun chain cleared the fourth and fifth simultaneously. He reached the mainframe. He put his hand on the primary connection point. Amira, he said, I have physical access. Tell me how to stop it without triggering the fail-safe. Amira was ready. She had been building the shutdown sequence since the moment the mainframe's beacon had been identified. She walked him through it in 12 steps, each one precise, each one building on the last. Step 12. The beacon went silent. The Fort Ridgeline network reported immediate system restoration across all 14 previously compromised perimeter constructs. The mainframe had been phoned. The mainframe had been stopped. Prince Parker stood at the command center and looked at both theaters simultaneously. The Geneva clearance signal green, the Fort Ridgeline restoration signal green, and did not allow his expression to change, because what he was feeling was not something he expressed through his expression. Operations complete, he said. Both theaters. Retrieve the pilots. Grandpa, Amir said. From the telemetry station. Precisely. Before retrieval, the mainframe's internal data before shutdown. I captured 3 seconds of readable output. It transmitted something in the moment of shutdown. A final signal. To where? That's what I'm determining. It will take approximately 7 minutes. Prince waited. Princess Parker was watching. The secondary feeds. The recovery signals from both frames. The status reports coming in from the split ground teams. The confirmation from the Geneva Summit Facilities Security Administration that all systems were operational. She looked at her father. He was standing at the command center with his arms crossed, and his expression doing exactly what it always did, giving away nothing, communicating everything. She had known him long enough to read the everything. He was relieved, not in a way he would ever acknowledge, but present in his posture was the specific quality of someone who had sent their family into a divided operation, the first of its kind, the highest risk deployment yet, and was receiving confirmation that both theatres had resolved. Dad, she said, quietly. He looked at her. They did well, she said. He held her gaze for a moment. They did what was required, he said, which from Prince Parker was the same thing. I have the signal destination, Amir said, 7 minutes and 14 seconds after he had started. Where? Prince said. Iceland, Amir said. A specific set of coordinates, not a facility address. A physical location. North coast, remote. The signal transmitted the mainframe's complete operational data set to a secondary location before shutdown. He looked up from the telemetry display. Sigma has a backup, and now we know where it is. The command center was very quiet. Mary Parker's voice came through the pilot channel. She and Cassandra were on the recovery approach from Geneva, the Aegis and the Cyber Viper running parallel over the Atlantic. We heard, she said. Yes, Prince said. Iceland, she said. Yes. A pause. The specific pause of someone receiving significant information and placing it in its correct context before responding to it. Then that is where we go next, Mary Parker said. Not as a question, as a statement of where the story was going. The protagonist receiving the direction of the next chapter with the specific, grounded clarity of someone who had been making decisions in this world, long enough to know that every resolved engagement was a door to the next one. Amin's voice joined the channel from Fort Ridgeline, quiet, certain. Agreed, Cassandra. I'll begin building the counter-architecture for whatever we find there. Prince Parker looked at the Iceland coordinates on the command center's main display. He looked at them for 3 seconds. Begin preparation, he said. We deploy in 48 hours. End of episode 9. A divided front earned 2 worlds, 1 family. パーカー一族。平成黎明の時代第9話。分断された前線。2つの世界。1つの家族。2つのアラートがメインモニターに同時に現れた。順番にではなく、1つが単独の応答を可能にする短い間隔を置いた後に別のものが来るのではなく、全く同じ瞬間にまるでシグマが同時性自体が武器であることを完全に理解した上で、状況の特定の計算を計画したかのように、2つの赤いシグネチャ、2つの場所、1つ大陸離れて、 ヨーロッパ、スイス、ジュネーブ、世界政治サミット、私13人の国家元首、議席の国際安全保障代表団。シグマの信号はすでにサミット施設の自動化されたセキュリティネットワークで活動中だった。アメリカ合衆国バージニア州、フォートリッジライン、東部防衛司令部のプライマリ軍事作戦拠点、両方が同時に起動、両方が9差のゲートを必要としている。パーカープリンスは2つのシグネチャをちょうど私秒で見た。それから家族を見た。別れると彼は言った。部屋は非常に静かだった。シグマが望むことだ。選択を強いること。選択はしない。同時に両方に対処する。パイロットを見た。メアリー、カサンドラ、ジュネーブ、アミン、フォートリッジライン、グラウンドチームを見た。ラシーム、チームはパイロットと分かれる。チェンバース・アメアとキャンベル・アミラ。ここから両方の戦場を同時に管理してほしい。パカプリンセスを見た。あなたは私のセカンドアイ。私が100としたらあなたがほらえる。誰も反論しなかった。誰も躊躇しなかった。パーカー・メアリーはパーカー・アミンを見た。何かが2人の階段を通った言葉ではない。パーカー・アミンは小さく確かな歯抜きを彼女に反した。それから2人はフレームへ向かった。ヴァンガードは一人でアメリカの領空をクリアした。ジャンカイシリーズのコアン、ティをトンズイてチュメて、タノパカージャズのフレームがパーカー・アミンの直接の作戦フィールドにいなかった。イージスはすでに大西洋を横断中だった。サイバーバイパーは四白フィート上で並行して働いていた。ヴァンガードのコックピットは以前には存在しなかった方法で静かだった。アミの持参、スラスターは最適、構造的完全性は正常、フォートリッジラインの自動外周は外部包囲リングでネットワーク破損を示している。パーカーにシームの声、了解。積極的な共異数は助手家事の自立護衛コンストラクトが侵害された。基地自身の外周システムを施設に向けた。維持停止。もう一つある。施設内部からのデータ送信、外周システムからではない。より深くから。大西洋の向こうから、キャンベル・アミラの声。アミの持参。施設に到着する前に送信を解読する。内部システムに強制しないで、その読み繰りがくれるまで。リャオジエ、トパカ・アメンハ・ヤンツータ。準部アイジスとサイバーバイパーをクリアされた交互回廊で受け入れた。パーカー・メアリー・ハイジスをサミット施設の兵アプローチに着地させた。私13人の国家元首は安全な部屋にいた。問題は自動化されたセキュリティネットワーク。シグマが体系的に保護インフラから封じ込めのものに変換しつつあった。目的は施設を破壊することではなかった。世界のリーダーシップを内部に封じ込め、地球上のあらゆる安全な施設にシグマが何をできるかを全ての国に自称すること。カサンドラとパーカー・メアリーは言った。変換状態は施設のプライマリネットワーク全体で東 3%、内部セキュリティリングが優先事項。それが変換すれば、首脳たちは全ての通信から切断される。内部リングに到達するまでどのくらい？現在の進行速度で水分、外周を保持する、変換を止めて取り組んでいる。イージスは未知に移動した。施設の敵アプローチに内部セキュリティリングの物理的結集をカバーするためにバリアを外側に展開して、施設内部では私13人の国家元首が外壁に白と獣のメカが未知していることを知らずに交渉を続けていた。フォートリッジラインで食事の侵害された包囲コンストラクトは組織されていた。ランダムに配置されているのではない。組織的にパーカー・ラミンがパタクフィート上から自動化されたプロトコルではなく戦術的指令の産物として読んだ包囲体制に、アルファオーラはヴァンガードが作戦範囲に入った瞬間に侵害されたシステム全体に登録した。自己出しの自動化されたコンストラクトからの脅威評価処理が強化中のシガナカのホロと赤のフレームに向けて同時にリダイレクトした。パーカー・アミンは体制を変た。人数、気合いることと遮れることの規律、相手がカバーしていない角度からのアプローチの、相手がそれが存在することを知らないから、体制の中腹するカバレッジフィールドには一つの特徴的なギャップがあった。配置の構造的な前線ではなく、主語詞のコンストラクトが全てのアプローチベクターを同時にカバーできないという付加書きの結果、ギャップは勝負と内側にあった。外周からの側面アプローチではなく、直接に上からの垂直アプローチを必要とする回路。 パカ・アミンはフレームをほぼスイッチのアプローチに引き上げて、最大死後速度で回廊を通じて強化した。体制のターゲティングソリューションは追記した。しかし、ギャップは彼らのカバレッジフィールドの矢にあるフレームを追記していることを意味した。他のコンストラクトがギャップを閉じるために再放送づけるまでに、ヴァンガードは内部回廊をクリアして体制の外周内部に入っていた。内部ではカバレッジフィールドは外の向いていた。彼はそれらの後ろにいた。キャンベル・アミラとパーカーにシムは言った。フォートリッジライン、内部からの深い送信。まだアクティブか？まだアクティブ。最初の暗号仮想を通過した。一時停止。ある。何？送信ではない。ビーコンだ。未知ビーコン。シグマのネットワークは、キテクチャのみが認識する周波数で、何かがフォートリッジライン、内部から自分自身の作標を一貫して繰り返しブロードキャストしている。2秒の沈黙。シグマはフォートリッジラインを攻撃していない。シグマのメインフレームはフォートリッジラインの内部にある。グラウンドステーションが完全に静止した。東海岸作戦の前からそこにある。サミット攻撃、外周コンストラクト。これらは陽動だ。本当の目的は私たちを占有させながら、東海岸の最も保護された軍事施設の内部にメインフレームを確立し終えることだった。プリンスに転送してとパーカーにシームは言った。すでに送信中とキャンベル・アミラは言った。パーカー・プリンスはコマンドセンターのプライマリディスプレイでそれを受け取った。アミン、新しい情報。メインフレームは施設内部にある。サブレベル7、逃走線。外周の光線は副質的。プライマリ目的は近メインフレームだ。ヴァンガードのコックピットで、パーカー・アミンは再放送付けする体制コンストラクトに対して羽起動の入り身エントリーを施行していた。3つ、入り身の前進エントリーパターンが再放送付けでカバーしていなかった角度に彼を持っていくにつれて急速に順番にルツ残っている。了解。ハイサービス回廊へのアクセスが必要。指示がください。とパーカー・アミンは言った。ジュネーブで変換シーケンスは粒子パーセントに出していた。ブラウン化3ドーラ運るまで主人したジョン・デズも複雑な電子転強線の中にいた。シグマのネットワークのヨーロッパシアター展開は東海岸アーキテクチャより精錬されていた。彼女は標準的な対信号方法論を使うのをやめた。抵抗ポイントを見た。上場化アーキテクチャを学んだ。ネットワークが予想されるアプローチに対してどのように強化することを選んだかの特定の方法を見た。強化自体が脆弱性がどこにあるかを教えてくれた。ネットワークは以前の強線から分析した対信号アーキテクチャに対して上場化を構築していた。彼女が以前にしたことに対して準備していた。以前にしていないことに対しては準備していなかった。彼女はネットワーク自身の洋上化構造を配信メカニズムとして使う対信号を構築した。おばあちゃん、あと私文必要。バリアは保持しているとパーカー・メアリーは言った。私文後、変換シーケンスが崩壊した。ジュネーブサミット施設のセキュリティネットワークは元の構成に戻った。私、四三人の国家元首はより詳しい情報なしにセキュリティブリーフィングを受け取るだろう。フォートリッジラインのサブレベル7でパーカー・アミン派ヴァンガードを出た。フレームはコリドーに入れなかった。彼は戦術スーツでサブレベル7のフロアに乗っていた。フレームなし、200トンの光学された保護なし。チャンバー内の自動砲火ユニットはある。小規模なもの。分かっていると彼は言いなった。ヴァンガードを回廊の入り口に保持して、信号を送ったら回収する。テコンドーの回転中蹴り、コンパクトで、高速で、同等の衝撃音2。他のどの技術より少ないスペースが必要。最初の2つを彼らが完全に彼の存在を登録する前に取った。下起動の転換ピボットが3番目の角度を与えた。ウィングチューンのチェーンが四半目と部番目を同時にクリアした。彼はメインフレームに到達した。キャンベル・アミラ、物理的アクセスがある。フェイルセーフを起動せずに止める方法を教えて。キャンベル・アミラは準備ができていた。12ステップで彼を通じて歩んだ。ステップ10時のビーコンが刑事になった。フォートリッジラインのネットワークは以前に侵害されたとき、私の外周コンストラクト全体で修作のシステム不言を報告した。グランドパ、トチエンバスウアメアハ、ヤンツータ、メンフーレ、ムノシアツトダンフェの内部データ。シャットダウンの瞬間に3秒の読み取り可能な処理を習得した。最終信号を送信した。どこへ？それを確認しています。撃的分かかります。パーカー・プリンスは待った。 気分自指名後、信号の目的地が分かった。アイスランド。特定の座標。施設の住所ではない。物理的な場所。非海岸。原価値。シャットだ。und hier nehmen wir Muhason Kwan na Union de Tasset dort 自的な場所に送信した。シグマはバックアップを持っている。そして今、それがどこにあるか知っている。コマンドセンターは非常に静かだった。パーカー・メアリーの声がパイロットチャンネルを通じてきた。彼女とブラウン・カサンドラはジュネーブからの回収アプローチ中で、イージスとサイバーバイパーが大西洋の上で並行して働いていた。聞こえたと彼女は言った。はいとパーカー・プリンスは言った。アイスランドと彼女は言った。はい、一時停止。重要な情報を受け取って、それに応答する前に正しいコンテキストに置く誰かの特定の一時停止。では、次はそこへ行くと、パーカー・メアリーは言った。主人公が次の章の本線を受け取る特定の根付いた明確さで、すべての解決された強戦が次のものへのドアだということを知る誰かの、パーカー・アメノシャンカフート、リツゼライン・カラチアナルニジャワツタ。静かに、確実に、同意する。ブラウン・カサンドラ、そこで見つけるものに対する対アーキテクチャの構築を始める。パーカー・プリンスはコマンドセンターのメインディスプレイのアイスランドの足用表を見た。3秒が見た。準備を始めろ。私始発時間で展開する。第9話終わり。分断された前線、2つの世界、1つの家族、